Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the change curve, which is part of our Managing for Success series with Sarah Charlton and James Wright from DG Legal. For those of you who haven't joined our webinars before, my name is Lucy and I am an assistant consultant with DG Legal. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. The slides from today's presentation will be sent over tomorrow and a recording of the webinar will be available. So if we do run over and you do need to leave, you will be able to watch the rest at another time. We are in webinar mode, so we can't see or hear any of you. So please feel free to use the Q&A function if you have anything to ask. By way of a brief introduction to our speakers, Sarah has a BSc Honours in Applied Accounting and is a fellow member of the Association of Chartered and Certified Accountants. Her career spans over 30 years working within the legal sector, fulfilling roles from practice manager through to COFA. During her career, she has worked with a number of legal regulators, professional bodies and government organisations. Sarah has been a member of the Institute of Legal Finance and Management throughout her career, qualifying as a fellow member in 2005. Sarah has also served as a chairperson between 2010 and 2012 and continues to serve as an executive council member. Sarah is also a trainer, tutor and examiner. James's career in legal finance spans over 25 years, working in medium to large law firms, managing their legal finance functions. His knowledge and experience in understanding the SRA accounts rules has enabled him to provide extensive support to the COFA and build processes and procedures to enable compliance. James has also been a tutor for the Institute of Legal Finance and Management for their diploma course, which during his time saw the number of students passing their final exam rise to 90%. James has also written practice and guidance notes both internally and for external clients and legal software providers. Thank you, and over to Sarah and James.
Thank you very much, Lucy. So, welcome to another whirlwind management training session where James and I will introduce you to the concept of the change curve, how people typically behave, and what you might be able to do to influence this. As always, I would like to share a disclaimer. They say you should never work with children or animals. So at this point, James and Lucy, their palms are probably sweating to what's coming up next, as my disclaimers are less than conventional. But I can confirm that the last known whereabouts of my teenage daughter is at school, so I'm not expecting her home. But anyone who's got any teenage kids, you'll know that that's a very, very loose assumption. I also have a very curious cat called Tango, who may wish to show up and say hello to everyone. His food and water bowls are both full, so I am hoping that any visit will be short and not too distracting for everyone. But if you do see a black tail, just like to say it's not me, it is my animal. Finally, you'll be pleased to know that the training should last no more than 20 to 25 minutes as usual, to ensure that there is time to, at the end, to answer any questions that you may have for James and I on today's session. So, a warm welcome. For those who have attended previous training that James and I have delivered, you will know that we do love a good scenario to demonstrate the point at hand. So I have been practicing this and I don't feel I'm going to be able to say the name without actually using a hand gesture as well. So today's scenario is about Stefani. So I think that you're probably going to struggle to read this scenario without some sort of Italian accent. So please take a few minutes to read the scenario. And then what I'd like you to be able to do is use a chat facility, pop in a tip that you would give to the person who's going to be responsible for delivering this message. So the obvious ones are good luck, rather you than me, but try to think of a tip that you might want to give to the person who's going in and telling Stephanie that she is about to move rooms. So don't be shy. I'm sure there'll be practice managers in the group today, and hopefully perhaps maybe some people who will be keen to share their opinion. So just take a few minutes to read the scenario, preferably with some Italian accent, maybe hand gesture. leave. But it'd be great. So I don't know if James, did you want to read out any that you see in the chat function? Did you want to?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of people that have said honesty, which is obviously a good one. Don't waffle. Use empathy, and being transparent and explaining the change and show empathy. So yeah, sort of some common ones there.
Yeah, I really like the honesty one, because that's rare actually. Quite often people want to go in and start sort of blaming other people, and we're going to talk about that, not actually owning the decision or delegating it to somebody because you don't want to give them the bad news. Brilliant, well done. So one of the things that James and I do talk about in some of the other sessions, it's often not the message itself, it's actually how you say it that can often offend. So taking some time to do some preparation rather than just going in there and just saying, Stephanie, you're moving, might not be the right approach. And we're going to talk about why that might not be the approach and the impact that could have both to other team members, but also the loss of productivity. So we're going to introduce you to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Apologies if the pronunciation is inaccurate. My German, I've been practicing a long time my Italian for that scenario, so I was off point for my German. Was it actually? I apologise. She's Swiss. It's a Swiss American psychiatrist who specialised in personal transition, largely through grief and bereavement. So the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and acceptance. However, it has been adapted over the years, and it is now widely used in business and specifically through change management. So having an awareness of how people will navigate through each stage of this change curve will allow you to be able to hopefully take them through the change curve as quickly as possible. The quicker you take them through this change curve, the quicker they're going to reach that productivity, and they will have just accepted the change. But it's important that you understand each stage and what you might be able to do to mitigate it, because everyone is different. And some people linger in a specific stage, and it can be very difficult to get them to move to another stage. If you do have a pen and pencil in front of you, and obviously taking into consideration the scenario that you've had, do have a think about the solutions a business could put in place to mitigate the shock factor, because that's the first part that's going to be, I can't believe they're doing this. And people may physically react to this, and it's going to be unplanned, unfiltered, raw emotion. So you need to be prepared for that. So the sort of things that you're able to do is pre-warn where possible. So one of the things that's really good for managing change is letting people know that we're in the early stages of looking to do a bit of a reshuffle in some of the rooms. It won't affect everybody, but a number of you it will affect, and we're going to speak to you on a one-to-one basis. Try to give that countdown, try to pre-warn staff that it may impact some or all of them, and then give regular updates to reduce that fear. So try to spin some positive in relation to the change, and sort of, make sure that people have an opportunity to ask any burning questions. You may not, know the detail, may not know the minutiae, or you might not be able to share that with them. But anything that you can do just keeps that in the back of the mind that change is going to happen, and I'm going to have to start thinking about it, considering it. So we're looking to reduce the shock factor. It's an opportunity to be involved if you can. It's not always possible, but if there was an opportunity maybe to order office furniture, or maybe to look at the design of a particular room, then if you are able to invite the people it's going to impact, then that's going to be a step that you can do to mitigate the shock factor. And we've already talked about providing a countdown. Also make it clear that, this is a trial, or, this isn't set in stone. If there are caveats to it, that you are prepared to listen to the staff. And if things are going wrong, then you're not, you don't necessarily have the right answer. You have made an educated guess. You may have canvassed people for their view and opinion, and you've come up with a scenario that is that's likely to be successful first time round. You're not knowingly going to put a change in that you sort of think, that looks a bit ropey, I think might drop the ball a few places here. But it's important that they realise that if they do give you feedback and the feedback is constructive, that you will consider change and tweaking whatever it is that you're putting in place. So one of the things that actually I should have mentioned was that this particular scenario was something that I dealt with very early in my career. I took over a team following the retirement of their head of department. And a member of the team who was on a fixed term contract was led to believe by the previous head of department that a permanent job offer would be available. But when I took over as head of department, there were a number of reasons, but I didn't feel the job offer was appropriate. So I'd made the decision that we weren't going to extend this person's fixed term contract. And obviously I took the decision to share that message, even though I was actually quite high up at the time. I knew this person was going to be upset because obviously they'd been led to believe that there was going to be a permanent contract. I knew that the meeting that they thought they were going to be going into would be to confirm that they had a permanent contract. But I had a set of tissues. I also invited somebody in from the HR department. At that point, this was early in my career, so my soft skills were maybe not quite as refined as they are today. So I wanted to make sure that somebody with excellent soft skills was with me, so that there was sort of aftercare, so that once that message had been given to her and they'd gone from the anger to being really upset, that I could leave them with that person for them to have some comfort and empathy. So my key taking from that particular scenario was that it was important to be compassionate and understanding, and be prepared for the emotional wave, because that person was really angry. I mean, really, really angry. And then obviously really floods of tears, very, very, very upset. I didn't try to blame the company. I was clear that it was my decision. If you start blaming other people, then you're creating other problems. And therefore, that's a conversation for another training session. But it helped to speed up the process because there wasn't anybody to blame. If they can blame somebody, then obviously that means they're going to hold on to that for a little bit longer. And if that person's still in the business, then that's going to be very difficult for them to move on emotionally from blaming that person. There was any blame to be had, it was with the previous head of department, because they promised them something that wasn't within their remit to promise. She really liked the previous head of department. So if she was going to blame this individual, then it was going to be short-lived, because she really, really liked that person. She had a first degree and worked within a department that was never going to, to fulfill her degree or her long-term ambition. There wasn't a love to the job, which is one of the reasons why I'd made the decision that, in essence, she was holding up the opportunity of somebody who was going to love the job and be with us long-term. She was holding that post up whilst if we had offered a permanent position. And it wasn't the career, the career choice that she was looking to do, and it wasn't in line with her degree. But me giving her a permanent job would have just delayed what was the inevitable, which was that she needed to chase her dream. So my decision was the right one, not just for the business, but it was actually the right decision for her, although probably if you asked her at the time, she wouldn't have thought that. As it happened, she went on to get this is, like I said, many years ago, she went on to get a training contract, and she is particularly successsul now. I'm sure the success would have happened anyway, but it may not have, the sort of mechanism that instigated her to sit down and concentrate and put her CVs in probably wouldn't have happened for several years had she been given a permanent job. So that just sort of gives you a little bit of a flavour of how difficult conversations and how that change sometimes, having that ownership and making sure that somebody has an opportunity to go through the anger, the grief, the upset. So the second stage is the denial. So we're talking about, why does this change need to happen? It, worked before. Why should I have to make the adjustment? I liked it the old way. You know the words that you're going to get from the team. But people may fear the worst. So you need to be able to prepare to counterbalance this. So some groups may protest or actively resist the change and want to force things back to how they were. And I use the word force for a given reason. This stage is the period where the most danger is likely to occur within the team. The team are going to waver at this point to decide whether they're going to give it an opportunity or not. If other members of the team have accepted it, then they go in to try and reverse their decision for accepting it. In some organizations, you may see people protest, resign, sabotage, long-term absence, pure refusal to do the job. So there's a lot of different things that people will go through, but anything that you can do to reinforce the need for the change, we need to change, because this business won't exist in 6 months, and we'll all be looking for jobs. Reinforce the expected results. You've done your research, you've had little pilots, or you've engaged in people in the relevant areas. You anticipate that the results of this will be, significant enough to warrant this level of change. Share any adjustments. We talked right, at the first stage, that it's important that individuals feel that you're going to listen to them and that you will make changes. So if there are credible changes, and I don't mean just, whinges and moans because they don't like the color of something. If there are credible changes, then don't be shy about making those changes. That will demonstrate your appetite for it to want to work and to bring the team along on that journey with you. Being observant and dispelling any rumors. So if you do hear, a little bit of banter about, someone changing rooms, or this is, that people sort of, gossiping and things like that, do try to nip it in the bud. Don't be afraid to walk on eggshells. Offering training and support, really emphasize that if people don't get it, it's not going to be a case that you're just going to be cut. We will try to train and support you. Everyone is different. People learn in different ways. So I'm going to pass you over to James now, who's going to go through the next 3 stages with you.
Hi guys. So the next stage is frustration. Quite commonly, people may feel deep emotional anger towards an individual, a team or company. This is likely to be in the form of some sort of suspicion or skepticism. Some people will just experience mild irritation from the change. However, some may have more bouts of heightened anger, which in some circumstances could lead to them being asked to take some time out, or in worst case scenario, asking them to leave the office. So here are some thoughts on how you might be able to reduce the frustration and what you need to do. Take time to listen. It's a key point. Be creative, create a positive and supportive environment. Show empathy for the emotional journey. Be sensitive to the situation. Show that you do care. Sarah, would you mind taking us on to the next slide, please?
I love it when you say that.
And then the next stage is, how can you help staff deal with the lows? Performance will be at its lowest, and therefore it is important to move the individual through this stage as quickly as possible. This is likely to be the point where the individual has started to accept the reality, which is a key part of the healing process. They're likely to experience a lot of negative emotion here, such as fear, regret, or guilt. This may be disengaged and withdrawn. If you are unable to move them past this stage, then it is highly likely that they will leave the business. It's important to be vigilant at this point. If they have the power and or influence over others, then these feelings may end up being transferred to other people within the team. As an example, an international law firm made their entire accounts department redundant in order to outsource the function overseas. They required some staff to stay on, to go to India and train those who were taking over their jobs. An awful lot of planning would have gone into how this message was to be delivered, what incentives would have been needed for the right people to stay on, which is obviously a key. If you're expecting people to implement change, it's important that you kind of make that point to them. Sarah, would you take us on to the next slide, please?
Marvellous. Do you just want to cover the things to mitigate it?
Oh, sorry, yeah. You should continue to be inclusive, even if it makes meetings difficult. Allocate specific tasks or responsibilities so they feel needed. Give praise for the smallest of milestones. Again, keep up the regular communication.
Marvellous.
Thank you. How to encourage experimental / exploration. So this is the next stage. Plan for the initial experience to be a positive one. You may get the buy-in from some parts of the change, but they are still holding back on the change as a whole. They are just focusing on the element that they have too, but this will increase performance, and you should also start to see signs to increase morale and engagement. Exposing them to new opportunities to experience the end results will also assist. Buddying up is also another way that might assist. Benefits from the change are likely to be seen during this stage. They will be vulnerable at this point, so there's likely to be a risk that they could take a step back. Again, just a couple of points: have power to influence, praise those for trying, and team culture is obviously a key part too. Sarah, I think that's back over to you now.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, James. So the decision point, this particular stage, this is where somebody is thinking, I've tried the change, I've dipped my toe in it, am I going to go for it, or am I still just going to waver and, you know, and the jury's out in relation to whether I want to embrace this change or not. So the sort of things that you can do to be able to influence that and just nudge them over to the direction that you're looking for them to accept it is creating an environment where it makes it effortless to become accepting. So if everyone else has accepted it and they are surrounded by people that have embraced it, it's going to feel more natural to go with the flow and follow what other people are doing. Reinforce the positives. So don't just, you know, send a good news message right at the beginning to say, this is a change that we're going to do, and these are going to be the results. If there are milestones that have been achieved, if there are results that you can share with them, you know, make sure that you say to the team, already we've seen this, there's an increase in productivity, or we've seen better client care, or it's been a better environment for our staff to work in, whatever the change is. But if you can share some positives, then now is the time to do it, just to nudge them over. Again, communication to reinforce why they should accept it. They're going to be running through in their mind, these are all the reasons why I shouldn't accept it, because someone's going to be made redundant, because it's automating, and I associate automating with everyone losing their jobs. They're going to give themselves reasons why they shouldn't accept it. So anything that you can do to reinforce why they should accept it is the timing and the place that you would want to be able to do it. Act swiftly. So the point that you see that they have accepted it, don't give them by all means 24 hours to think about it, but don't give them weeks and weeks and weeks to ponder on it and then talk themselves back round to rejecting that particular change. And then finally, we have the integration. We have that euphoria moment. Finally, you're there. So some will simply have resigned themselves to the change and adapted and accepted it, but don't let that take you away from reflecting on the journey and celebrating the success, especially if it's quite a big, significant piece of change. This will help make other change easier, shorten the sort of curve, the change curve, and it will mean that people will be looking forward to the success, or whether it's a party, whether it's donuts or a healthy fruit box, or whether it's somebody's got promoted, somebody's had pay rises, any positive of celebration or reward that you can put at the end, it will entice them to go through that change curve much quicker the second time round. And this will then bring you back to the team problem solving and solutions and how to move things forward. This is where you're likely to see your return of investment. Up till this, you may see some minor returns of investments, but you're probably not going to see anything that's particularly significant. So what I'd like you to do is just take a few seconds to reflect back on Stephanie's scenario and put in any ideas that you have from those different stages. So we did have, James did mention some of the chats about honesty and openness and things like that. Having listened to the different stages, are there any other things that you feel that you could identify in this particular scenario that would help equip the poor soul who's going in to tell this lady that she's about to change rooms after 35 years? Please do take a few seconds to think if there was anything. And then I'm going to give you some ideas. which hopefully, do we have anything on there, James? Or
no, I mean, just a couple of points that I think we've covered in some element during the session, but being supportive to Stephanie, emphasize any plus points on the new location.
Like it.
So,
yeah. So
explain the situation and see if they've got any concerns which can be considered, which again sort of harks back to being supportive.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And it's important when you have that opening conversation that you do set the stall out to say that if you have any concerns, if there's feedback, then you need to let us know. So what I would do if I was in that situation, I would make the new location really attractive. I would go the extra mile to perhaps put a potted plant, put something nice in the room so it's inviting and comfortable. Then I would think about what they value most. So if, for instance, this room might be closer to the photocopier, so they're not having to travel so far, if they're always grumbling about something, think about what you might be able to do to put nearer the desk to make it easier for them. And try to sort of, think about, could it be used as a step up? Actually, this is closer to the directors, this is, you do such a great job, and this senior figure wants to be able to touch base with you face to face. Then you could also meeting the person rather than doing it obviously by email would be great. The reason why you're trying to do this isn't so much pandering to someone's need, which I know a lot of people on the call are going to be sitting there thinking, well, should you really be going to all of this effort? It's not necessarily about that. It's about the loss of productivity and the loss of good people. If you treat a member of staff poorly, they're going to tell everyone in the firm. So instead of them working, they're going to be listening to this story. Some people aren't going to be particularly happy that you've moved someone who's been there for 35 years. And if this sits on the back of other incidences where you've not necessarily treated staff with respect or with the honesty and showed empathy, then you could be losing good people and you could be losing productivity because it's been poorly managed, both of which costs money. And being an accountant myself, money obviously talks. So finally, it's just remembering that we're all different. We all process emotions differently. Some people go through the whole change curve. So James could ring me up and say, Sarah, I think we should be doing this. I might go from sort of like, well, actually, I don't think we should. Well, I'm not happy about that. Who does James think he is? And then I might actually think, well, actually, that's a really good idea. Oh, I should have actually thought that myself, because obviously I'm starting to process it. And it's like, yeah, let's do it, James. So I might be processing that within a couple of seconds. However, I may be the type of person who wants to take that away. I might want to ponder on it. So it's appreciating that we're all different. And how much time we spend at each point will be different. Some people may go through the first few stages really quickly, but they may stay in the resentment stage. And that's the one that James talked about, where James turned around and sort of said, that's where you're probably going to lose people because they can't get out of that resentment stage, whether that's resenting the company or resenting their manager. And then what we place value on. So for some people, they're just happy as long as you give them the tools, they'll do what you ask them to do when you ask them to do. However, other people do feel that they're valued and they are part of the team. And what else is going on in your life? If you're going through a messy divorce, or if you're going through a bereavement, if you are looking to change jobs or change careers, there's various different things that will be going on in our private life. And that's likely to impact how we're going to react through that change curve and how fast we're going to go through it and how much change we are familiar with. So I work in a law firm that change hadn't happened particularly regularly. So me coming in and changing people's rooms was something relatively new. However, they are 5 years on and they have change on a regular basis. So me going in and saying, we're going to do something, they're used to it because they're comfortable with it. They know that we will make those tweaks and those changes, and they have those celebrations and the rewards at the end of it. So it's really important that we do appreciate that we're all different. Finally, are there any questions that anybody would like to ask? And with that deathly silence, I will be pleased to tell you that that is the end of your 30-minute management series on change.
Thank you so much, Sarah and James.
Thank you.
Just as a quick reminder to everyone before we finish that the slides and a recording of the webinar will be sent over tomorrow. And this afternoon, you should receive an email asking to rate us out of 5 stars. So if you have enjoyed today, please do leave some feedback. And we also welcome suggestions for future topics too. I'll just leave you with a reminder that our series of webinars continues on the 25th of April. We will be presenting on the importance of time recording and the art of delegation with Paula Wheatley from Charlton Accountants. Thank you, James and Sarah, again, and good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.